Alright, Esper Reanimator. This deck was made by streamer Aspiringspike. There's many different versions of Reanimator. This is my current favorite. Modern Horizons 2 introduced a couple of new tools for the archetype. Those being Persist, Unmarked Grave, and Archon of Cruelty. And then Midnight Hunt brought us Faithful Mending and Consider. I believe that this combination of cards has boosted the power level of this deck quite a bit. The basic combo is you cast an Unmarked Grave, search your library for a non-legendary card and put it into your graveyard. Archon of Cruelty is a non-legendary card, so you grab him and you put him in your yard. And then you cast Persist on the Archon and bring it back to the battlefield with a -1/-1 counter on it. Now, the reason why we're playing Archon of Cruelty, I believe it's currently the strongest non-legendary target for reanimation in the entire modern format. This card hits the battlefield in a pretty big way. When it enters, your opponent sacks a creature or planeswalker, discards a card, loses 3 life, you draw a card, and you gain 3 life. And then if you get to attack with Archon, you do all of that again. Usually, swinging once with this is enough to seal the deal and close the game out. There are a couple other ways, other than Unmarked Grave and Persist, to complete this combo. We play 2 copies of Unburial Rites. This is a 5-mana reanimation spell, however, if it's in your graveyard, it has flashback, costing 4 mana. Faithful Mending allows us to discard Archons and Unburial Rites from our hand to work towards the combo. It also, incidentally, gains a little bit of life and has flashback itself. The last kind of situational way to complete the combo is you could Thoughtseize yourself. You have to reveal your whole hand to your opponent in the process, but you could then discard an Archon in your hand, and this can potentially set you up to get an Archon back onto the battlefield as early as turn 2 if you also have a Persist. This is, of course, a combo deck. There are plenty of interactive spells in our deck, but most of them are focused on stopping our opponent from stopping us, if that makes sense. Thoughtseize checks your opponent's hand and can rip out answers, such as counterspells or things that kill your Archon. Prismatic Ending is an excellent answer for various pieces of graveyard hate that stick around on the battlefield. You could remove just about anything. Teferi Time Raveler prevents your opponent from casting their counterspells, and it can also return pieces of graveyard hate to your opponent's hand. For example, where Prismatic Ending can't hit a Leyline of the Void, because Leyline costs 4, and we can only make 3 colors with this deck, Teferi Time Raveler is able to bounce it. So it's something that you would usually like to leave at least 1, maybe 2 copies of in your deck post-sideboard, because it is a generalized answer. And finally, we play 8 blue cantrips. The new one from Midnight Hunt is Consider. This has a pretty strong upside of potentially putting an Archon into your graveyard. You look at the top card of your library, and you may put that into your graveyard, and then you draw a card. Obviously, using Consider as your primary way of finding an Archon isn't really feasible because you only can play 4 Archons, and your deck is much larger than that, so you're not usually favored to find an Archon and put it into the yard with Consider. This could be averted somewhat with Serum Visions. Serum Visions is the best cantrip in Modern to play in a combo deck where you're looking for specific cards. It sees a total of 3 cards. You draw 1, that's 1 card, and then you scry 2, that's another 2 cards. However, if one of the cards that you see happens to be an Archon, and you just so happen to also have a Consider in your hand, you can, of course, leave that Archon on top, and then use Consider to put the Archon into the graveyard. It's for this reason that if you do have both cantrips in your hand, you generally want to cast the Serum Visions first. The last card in this deck that I haven't talked about yet is Drown in the Loch. You don't have any synergies with it in the deck, however, it is a counterspell and a removal spell that's easier to cast than the card Counterspell itself. Counterspell is double blue, And if we were to play some number of counterspells in our deck, our mana base would be a lot less comfortable. We wouldn't be able to play multiple Godless Shrines. The basic Plains and Swamp would be a lot less attractive. And the entire setup here would look significantly different if these were counterspells instead. As for the sideboard, we have 4 Leyline of the Void here to help combat other graveyard-based decks. The reason why we played Leyline is because it is a card that does not affect our own graveyard. It only hoses the opponent's graveyard. We are able to play 4 of them because we have Faithful Mending, so if we draw an additional one, it's a potential card to discard to Faithful Mending. We also play some general answers against the Cascade decks. Flusterstorm is good against them, as well as Chalice of the Void on 0. We are almost never bringing in Chalice of the Void if it is not good on 0. We're also playing Engineered Explosives. Again, we're only bringing this card in when it's good on 0 or sometimes 1. Serra's Emissary is another card for Modern Horizons 2. We're choosing not to play it in the main deck because Archon is good in almost every situation, whereas sometimes Serra's Emissary can't name one card type and expect to live. For example, many decks have Planeswalkers or instants or sorceries that are all able to kill the Emissary, and if that happens, you have not gained any advantage by playing the Emissary and simply given your opponents a target for their removal that was dead up until that point. Other than the sideboard cards I've mentioned so far, there's also Fatal Push to help against faster, more aggressive decks with cheap threats. We also have Teferi, Hero of Dominaria. He's a pretty good threat that isn't a creature, which can sometimes be relevant, and we'll bring it in, especially when we expect our opponents to have ways to answer our creatures once they hit the battlefield. Alright, Esper Reanimator by twitch.tv/Aspiringspike. Let's go ahead and take this bad boy through a league. Alright, round 1 we won the die roll, so I'll go ahead and play first. I usually play pretty quickly and intuitively, so I will attempt to explain my thought processes as much as possible. My opponent reveals Lurrus. This hand has the turn 2 Archon. We lose to a discard spell, but if this is Hammertime, then we kind of win. So I think I'm going to take a risk and keep this hand. Thoughtseize myself. Mishra's Bauble, not unexpected. Out of a Lurrus deck. Bloodstained Mire, so this might be Jund, perhaps Burn. Still not quite sure. Okay, it looks like it's going to be a Jund deck of some sort. Pirate Spellbomb. Okay. So yeah, it's definitely some sort of a Urza Saga deck. It's either green-red or Jund. We'll see. Hopefully Archon turn 2 is just good enough. Okay, Bolt Spellbomb will kill it. Let's dig with Serum Visions and try to find another reanimation spell. Unmarked Grave is technically 1, so we'll draw it. And we'll draw another Serum Visions next turn. Now Spellbomb, unfortunate. Okay, we need to find a Prismatic Ending for that before we proceed. We'll draw this Mending. It digs. Lurrus to hand, Urza's Saga, land for turn. Okay, so my window to find both Prismatic Ending... Well, I'm not sure if they play more than one Spellbomb in their main deck. That seems somewhat unlikely. I'll fire off the Mending on their turn. We could do it twice. We'll fetch first to get a land out of our deck. I'll get a basic Plains. Faithful Mending. Discard. We'll discard both of these Unmarked Graves. It's a potential option for us to play both of these lands out and simply hardcast the Archon. We'll see, though, what we find with Faithful Mending. Okay, there's a Prismatic Ending. No reanimation spell, though. I'll get rid of the cantrip in the land. It's probably not a great idea, but I think it's our best option. We'll play that tapped. Exile the Spellbomb. He'll exile our yard in response. One construct token. Let's see what he finds with the Saga. If it's another Spellbomb, that'll be unfortunate. I think he's likely to try to cast Lurrus this turn, so that he could get Spellbomb back, although he did just take that option away from himself. Not going to be able to cast this Archon next turn, but the turn after, if we draw a land, we can. Okay, he's going for life with Shadow Spear. Another Dragon's Rage. Two more Dragon's Rages. Yeah, we're dead. Okay. This is a very hard deck for our strategy to beat. They have many ways to interact with us, including discard spells. And they present a fast clock. The Thoughtseize isn't great against them. Most of their threats are 1 mana. We want Fatal Push for their cheap threats. Engineered Explosives isn't great. They usually only have 1 threat out at a time. Serra's Emissary doesn't help very much. They have a variety of ways to interact with us. We would need 3 emissaries naming creature, instant, and sorcery, and maybe even artifact out to actually insulate us fully. I kind of want these Leylines too, so we could cut a Teferi and one of our Archons. They don't have ways to exile our Archons, so I'm not worried about cutting one of them. And Teferi's okay, but a little bit slow and prone to dying to burn spells. They also tend to play on their turn quite a bit. Is there anything else I want? Kind of want this Teferi hero. And then I could cut one of these Drowns since I have the Leylines in. And I brought in Fatal Push. Yeah, I think I'll submit this. Obviously, he'll have more Grave Hate in the second game. Probably things that he could get with Urza's Saga. I'll play first. So if we draw white mana, we're in an okay spot, but we need 2 things here. We need white mana, and we need a way to discard this Archon. Consider helps with both of those. I'll try it. This is probably an unwise decision, but I'll try it out. We'll play Darkslick. Fatal Push if he plays a Monkey, or consider on his end step. He has a spell bomb on turn 1, so we'll fire off the consider and try to find white mana to exile that. That's white mana, so we'll draw it. An extra Prismatic Ending makes me feel pretty good. We'll go to exile right now. I'll fire off a push. I think the monkey is more threatening. Okay, we'll play the tapped Watery Grave and pass. Mishra's Bauble Surveil. Land for turn is a Saga. Dashed Monkey, unfortunate. He gets rid of our Godless Shrine. We'll try to remember that we only have one left in the deck, although I'm unlikely to fetch it. A Faithful Mending, that's pretty good. Okay. So, assuming he doesn't have Surgical Extraction, we can get a Archon into play this turn. I'll get a basic island to preserve my life total. Discard one of the Archons, keep the other one in my hand, just in case. I expect this to eat Terminate. Sacrifices Darcy. Discards Forest. Okay. How will you kill this opponent? Okay, no Terminate. And he doesn't have Delirium for heat yet. If he attacks with Ragavan, I won't block, because that will put my Archon dead to Lightning Bolt. Although, that might be good. That would get a lot of cards out of my opponent's hand. And I do have Unmarked Grave to go find a reanimation spell. However, Urza Saga will be coming off next turn and can probably find another spell bomb or similar. At the very least, if I block the Ragavan, I don't think he'll be able to make a construct with Urza Saga. No, he could still have a land. Another Saga for turn. And he just passes. Okay, let's try to swing. We get another trigger. I'm surprised. Play this tapped. And pass. No need to fire off the Unmarked Grave quite yet. He makes a token. What will you get, opponent? If he gets Spellbomb and exiles my yard, I don't think I will Faithful Mending in response. Makes another construct. He gets Shadow Spear. He's gonna try to race. I'm not sure that's gonna work out for him. He really needs to kill this Archon. Dashed Monkey. And he gets in there. Exiles Prismatic Ending, that doesn't help with Archon. And he scoops. Okay. A rare win versus this deck with Reanimator, that's kind of nice. I'm realizing Engineered Explosives is actually necessary because of Urza Saga tokens. So we'll bring those in. Leyline is okay. Let's see if I can make any other cuts to bring in another Leyline or two. The other Drown can be cut. And these Teferis really don't seem that good at all. We'll cut 2 for the other 2 Leylines. So overall we brought in 4 Leylines, 3 Engineered Explosives, Teferi Hero, and 2 Fatal Push. We took out 2 Drowns, 3 Teferis, 4 Thoughtseize, and 1 Archon. Okay. We'll submit this. Prismatic Ending showing off how nice it is. We got rid of the 1 piece of graveyard hate that our opponent was able to deploy. And we got there. It appears that our opponent only has 1 piece of graveyard hate in the entire deck. So, as long as we could hold a Prismatic Ending for that, if he fetches it off of Saga, we can get there. It's unfortunately hard to exile Nihil Spellbomb with Prismatic Ending because the opponent could always activate it in response and send it to the graveyard. That's a big part of the reason why Leyline of the Void is in the deck, so that our opponent can't get Spellbomb back with Lurrus. In this way, we have gained inevitability. Interesting. I have to mulligan, but very interesting. Okay, this one I'll keep. We'll put Leyline out. Sorry, this is the part where we put something on the bottom of our deck, which unfortunately... I think Consider is the weakest card here. Put Leyline out. Ignoble Hierarch. That's a tough one. I think I will Explosives on 1. Hopefully this prevents him from playing additional threats. Dash Dragavan, okay. Takes a land off the top of our deck, thank you. Mishra's Bauble. Looking at what we're drawing. We're drawing a Darkslick Shores, which he knew about, so we'll play it. If he dashes the Ragavan again, I will blow up the Engineered Explosives. Okay, there's the Dash Monkey. We'll blow it up. There's a Spellbomb. We'll exile that with Prismatic Ending. Unfortunate that he had a second Ragavan, but it is what it is. Okay, he gets another bonk on us with the Ragavan. I would love to draw a Faithful Mending at this point. That's about the best draw we could get. He does make a Construct. And he does have another Spellbomb. Interesting, he didn't have one last game. Or perhaps, since my Archon was already out, he chose to get the Shadow Spear instead. I guess that makes sense. Okay, this game just got a lot harder. But at least he took another land off of our deck. Consider is an okay draw. We'll fire that off right now. We'll draw Serum Visions. And we'll try to put another land on top for the Ragavan to eat. The Fatal Push is a good draw as well. We'll kill the Construct token, I think. Obviously, I don't want our opponent to have Leyline of the Void, so I put that on the bottom. Ragavan exiles our Godless Shrine from the top that we left there with Serum. He's looking somewhat flooded out. Not a lot to do with his mana, apparently. I assume he has a removal spell for the Archon in his hand. He puts Lurrus into his hand. And he casts it. Okay, well at least he doesn't get any value out of it. Explosives is decent. We'll play that on 1. This will kill the Spellbomb and the Ragavan. Lurrus will still be around. Oh, I should have blown up the engineered explosives in response to that Thoughtseize. It would have left me with an Archon in the yard. That was a mistake. Red and 6 does not change the clock. Swamp doesn't really help. Okay, and we're dead next turn. And we're dead. Red and 6 did change the clock, that's my mistake as well. Okay. Yeah, that's an incredibly difficult deck to beat, unfortunately. That mistake that I made with not blowing up the explosives in response didn't end up mattering, but I still potentially could have won that game if I had ripped a Persist off the top. It is what it is. Let's go to match 2. Okay, match 2. I won the die roll. I'll choose to play first. Our opponent reveals Lurrus. Persistent 2 Mendings. I like this hand. We'll keep. I'll fetch and shock for a Hallowed Fountain to cover my colors. And of course, Serum Visions. We grab a Thoughtseize, that's an okay draw. I will keep this Polluted Delta because we need it to be able to cast Faithful Mending. But I'll bottom the Prismatic Ending. Our opponent plays Marsh Flats or a Snow-Covered Plains Mem Knight. Okay, so we're playing against Hammertime. So guard is aid. Okay, I think we need the Thoughtseize to stay alive here. Is there's a Saga that turns into a hammer eventually. He doesn't have he does not have a hammer yet though, so we'll go ahead and grab the Stoneforge Mystic and hope to be able to kill the Pure Steel Paladin. Somewhat unlikely. There's some argument for having left Prismatic Ending in the top of my library, but we do need a way to get an Archon into the yard. Okay, there's an Unmarked Grave, so I think we're going to be okay. Okay-ish. He'll play Pure Steel Paladin this turn. Apparently he won't, never mind. If we draw a Thoughtseize, I'll probably want to play it, so I'll get a Godless Shrine. Another Persist is a great draw. I want to keep up Thoughtseize and Prismatic Ending in case we draw it, so I'll tap like this. Let's see what he sacrifices. He sacrifices Mem Knight, that makes sense. We get a Polluted Delta. I'll play it. We can Faithful Mending. Here I assume he animates Inkmoth Nexus, or, well, okay, so he'll make a construct on the end of my turn, untap, animate Inkmoth Nexus, attach Hammer to it, and swing, I assume? Because he has Pure Steel. See what he does. I'm blocking whatever he puts the hammer onto with Archon, though. Makes it colorless. Animates Ink Moth. Gets a hammer, I assume. Yes. Puts it on Ink Moth. That's okay for us. He does have another planes in his hand, so he will play Pure Steel, re-equip the hammer. Memnite. It's more sacrifice fodder. I'll fire off Mending. The life is somewhat relevant. I thought he had another planes for some reason. Oh, he discarded it. That's odd. Okay, Drown is a great draw. Thoughtseize is okay. But we'll discard Mending Rites. We'll Persist. Oh, Prismatic is also a great draw. Oh, I have so many good options here. Okay, so we know that his hand is Pure Steel Paladin. I'm unsure what the other card is. It seems like he's going to have difficulty playing it. Whatever happens, I am going to Persist this turn, though, so we'll go ahead and do that. We'll see what he discards. He discards a plane, so his last card is still Pure Steel Paladin. We'll just hold up Drown. If he's able to equip a hammer somehow, I'll just kill whatever he puts the hammer on, and then we're in a pretty good spot. Okay, we'll untap. We'll immediately swing. Discards Cranial Plating. Okay, so we'll go ahead and Thoughtseize to get rid of that Pure Steel Paladin. And then let's see. If I Prismatic Ending the Sigarda's Aid, I don't think there's a thing that he could draw that would help him out here. If he draws Paladin, he won't be able to cast it. And we have Drown in the Loch up for whatever he plays. He scoops it up. He realizes he's dead. Okay. So versus Hammertime, we want Fatal Push, Serra's Emissary, Engineered Explosives. That's 6 cards. Teferi's not great against them. And I could shave an Unburial Rites and an Archon, because we probably don't want to keep hands that rely on Unburial Rites or discarding Archons because they're somewhat slow. Try it out. Multiple Prismatic Endings, and the ability to cast them. Serra's Emissary in hand. I think I'll try this out. It's, no. I feel pretty good with 2 Prismatics. We'll try it out. This deck, beating this deck is more about stopping them than it is about advancing your own game plan. And if we ever are able to discard this Emissary, we're in a pretty good spot. Thoughtseize for one of my Prismatics, I assume. Yes. He's checking what I'm drawing. It's a Watery Grave. We'll play a land that he already knows about and pass. He knows our whole hand at this point. Sanctifier. We will have to Prismatic Ending that. We'll get a Hallowed Fountain. Already have plenty of black mana in our hand. Engineered Explosives is also interesting. It makes me feel better about using this Prismatic Ending on the Sanctifier, at least. 2 colors, 2 drop. Yeah, we got it. Go ahead, opponent. We can survive 1 hit from a hammer here, so I'm not super afraid. He just attacks with Memnite. 3 cards in hand. It's a Stoneforge Mystic grabbing hammer, I assume. Yes. Another Memnite. Okay, we'll just go ahead and put out explosives on 1. That could kill a hammer. If he equips it. A Sanctifier, okay. We could still discard Serra's Emissary, even with Sanctifier on board. But we might just be taking slow beats here. Engineered Explosives is a good draw. We'll play that out on 2. And we'll pop it on my opponent's turn. We'll be saving ourselves 3 damage if we pop it now. I don't think that's particularly relevant. I'd rather him not be able to play his Pure Steel Paladin if he has one. First to hand. Okay. Another Archon. Not what I wanted to see. Mending is about the best thing that we could draw here. Cast Lurrus. Get back Amishra's Bauble. We'll start to accrue advantage here. Another Archon. Okay, we're just dead on the board. Unfortunate that we drew all of our creatures and no way to discard them. I like how I like this sideboard plan, so we'll go ahead and submit. That is something that you might want to consider if you're keeping a hand with sideboard cards but no cantrips or no parts of the combo. You could get into situations like that where you can't control your draws and you just draw very poorly, lots of lands or creatures that you can't discard. We'll play first for game 3 though. I think this is worthwhile. I'll keep this one. I'll most likely consider on turn 1. Yeah, I think I'll consider. We'll get a Watery Grave and try to find a land with this consider. 2 Baubles and a Springleaf Drum. We'll put Persist into the graveyard. We already have one. Another Unmarked Grave. Land? No land. We'll Thoughtseize. Stoneforge Mystic and Paladin. Well, Stoneforge finds a hammer, so I think that's the first priority. Go ahead, opponent. Cast a Sanctifier. That makes sense. Okay, land? No land. Okay, that's game. Unfortunate. That is the risks of keeping a one-lander. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. This list is playing, I believe, 20 lands. We could double check that real quick. 20 lands, yeah. So we had a pretty good hand with 2 lands, obviously. And let's think about our chances. Our deck was about 50 cards big, so 2 out of 5 on each draw step. Consider saw 2 cards, neither of them were a land. I think not drawing one in that many turns is a little unlucky, but our opponent also got a little lucky drawing a hammer after we took Stoneforge Mystic away. So, it is what it is. Off to an 0-2 start, kind of unfortunate. Hammertime is usually a pretty okay matchup. Jund Saga is usually a pretty bad matchup. We'll see how we do for the rest of the league. Maybe we could 3-2. We'll see. Okay, our opponent chooses to play first. This is a one-lander with no cantrips, so that's not a keep. This, however, is a pretty good hand. So we'll keep. And we'll put back one of the fetch lands. 3 is plenty. Mishra's Bauble immediately. Blood Crypt, Ragavan. Okay, so we will go ahead and Prismatic Ending that. With Hallowed Fountain? If we go back to our mulligan decision, it would have been better to bottom a Polluted Delta rather than the Marsh Flats so that we could get a basic in this situation, but overall it's not that big of a difference. It's just, it's 2 life, and this hand will make back that life with some speed by executing our combo, of course. Okay, if our opponent has a discard spell, then this game gets a lot harder. It appears he doesn't, and we have 2 persists. I'm feeling pretty good about our chances at getting an Archon back. Cycles in Unearth. It's odd that this deck isn't playing Inquisition. Hopefully he doesn't have 2. It's odd that this deck isn't playing Lurrus. This could be the sacrifice deck. Well, cast a Consider Thoughtseize. There's no Prismatic Ending target, so I'll leave up Darkslick Shores for whatever we draw. If we draw anything. We drew Consider and our opponent scoops. Okay, cool. So it looks like black-red. I'm not sure what they're playing that would make them not play Lurrus. I'm somewhat less motivated to put Leyline, seeing no Lurrus. I will take in Fatal Push. Yeah, I'll just bring in Fatal Push for now, since all I really saw was Ragavan and discard spells. I assume our opponent doesn't have very many ways to exile, so I'll get rid of an Archon and one of the Unburial Rites. I assume we'll see some Grave Hate, so I leave in the Prismatic Endings and the Teferis because they are the most generalizable answers. Okay, this hand's pretty good. We have Mending and 2 cards that we would like to put into the graveyard, so we'll keep. Our opponent molds to 6. And he has a turn 1 Soul Guide Lantern. Okay. Most likely grab a tapped Hallowed Fountain. Actually, Godless Shrine may be more appropriate with this hand. Prismatic Ending is a pretty good draw. Let's see here. Do I want to do that right now? It would allow my opponent to draw a card off of this, but the only other thing that we would be doing is Faithful Mending, and that's not really gonna jive, so we'll Prismatic Ending. And we'll get another tapped shock land. Probably a Hallowed Fountain this time. 3 mana for Ashiok Dream Render. That's pretty unfortunate. Oh shit, I should have fetched in response. Forgot about that. What did he exile? Get a Teferi. Okay. Well, Ashiok doesn't actually prevent us from discarding something because it exiles our yard once each turn. So we'll Mending, End Step, and then Persist, and hopefully that's enough to get there. Fulminator Mage, okay. He has graciously allowed us to cast this Faithful Mending. We'll keep the Unburial Rites in hand. I don't want it to get exiled. Okay, Persist. Do you have Surgical Extraction as well, opponent? 3 pieces of Graveyard Hate? Somehow I doubt it. We'll Thoughtseize. And that's probably game. Cool. We made a pretty big mistake by not cracking that fetch in response to Ashiok, but our opponent made an even larger mistake by not passing to a second main phase before activating his Ashiok, therefore allowing us to cast Faithful Mending with no fear of our graveyard being exiled. But we'll go ahead and move on to the next match. Round 3, we won the die roll, so we will choose to play first. No companion reveal. Let's look at this hand. Having a Persist is a pretty good start, and we also have a Mending and a Consider, so I think this is a keeper. We have a lot of ways that we could potentially find an Archon and put it into our yard, so we'll go and do that. Since I already have the Mending, I'm not going to hang on to this Thoughtseize. Our opponent has Gemstone Caverns, exiling Wooded Foothills. This might be some sort of Ponza deck or something. I'm not 100% sure. Oh, well, it could simply be Temur Rhinos, I guess. That's the most likely case. We'll grab Godless Shrine in case we want to get a basic next turn. Yes, this is Temur Rhinos. I think taking Shardless is simply the best option, so we'll go ahead and do that. Shock's in a breeding pool. Nice. Okay, that's fine. That was his draw for the turn. We're not completely cold to Rhinos here. Seasoned Pyromancer fixes his hand quite a bit. He discards one of his lands. He still has a force in his hand. No, we already have a Teferi. We'll graveyard that. There we go. Let's go ahead and bait out the Force. Force, exile, Force. Okay. Do you have the Rhinos, opponent? We have 2 Prismatic Endings for that. There's always a chance that we draw an Archon, Faithful Mending, and Persist. Okay. We just need a land. We got the land. We'll block the Shardless Agent this turn. I don't want to lose my Archon. Okay, my opponent scoops it up. That was good enough for him. I feel like I played that pretty well. I'm not going to lie to you. Okay, so against Cascade matchups, we want Flusterstorm, Chalice of the Void, and specifically against Rhinos, we want Engineered Explosives to be able to blow up the Rhinos. But it's not good. Honestly, most of our deck is pretty okay against them, so we'll just shave a little bit of everything. Prismatic loses some value. They're unlikely to play permanent-based answers to our stuff, and all it really does is kill Rhinos, which can be good enough, but I would rather answer it more cleanly by countering it, making them unable to play the Rhinos, or killing them, killing all of the Rhinos on the battlefield at the same time with the explosives. So we'll cut those. We'll cut 1 Archon, 1 Unburial Rites, and I suppose a Serum Visions. We'll submit. This hand could prevent my opponent from doing things, but it has no action for ourselves, so we'll mulligan. And this is a pretty decent hand. We'll keep that. We'll put back 1 of the explosives. One is plenty. We only really need to be able to answer 1 Rhino, or 1 Cascade of Rhinos. He suspends. Strand go. I don't want my opponent to ice me, so I won't fetch. That's a nice little trick you could do. He had an upkeep stop, so he's definitely considering it. And then we'll play another fetch so that he can't ice us on our end step, and we could continue to hold up, you know, things. We'll also play an explosives on 0. Would you like to force that? No, okay. Go ahead, opponent. Okay, well, Faithful Mending with 2 basics, I suppose. We'll dispute that, that's fine. Now we can't make Rhinos. Would you like to ice me, opponent? The answer is yes. We'll play out our Darkslick Shores and pass. I believe there's one more turn until those come out. You cast a Murktide Regent. Okay. I'd love to draw another Mending. Ooh. Oh, I don't have double black. Okay, that was a consideration for not getting basics. Unfortunate. We'll Thoughtseize ourselves, get rid of the Archon. And then be able to persist it next turn. And we have Engineered Explosives up for the Rhinos. Rhinos are fine. I probably should have held on to that. Persist? Force, I assume? Or perhaps Dispute. He makes some Rhinos, okay. Well, we get an Archon. That's pretty nice. Yeah, this definitely should have been a Godless Shrine. Unfortunate. We'll just take the hit. Oh, he returns it to our hand. Okay. Okay, we'll flashback Mending. Another Archon. Nothing my opponent can do about it. Can we Drown of the Loch that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yes, we can peel that with Drown of the Loch. Cool. Quick 2-0 against Team of Rhinos. Also a pretty good matchup. I'll see you in the last round. Alright, round 5 of the league, we won the die roll. I will choose to play first, thank you. Our opponent is revealing a companion. It is Lurrus, not a surprise. Okay. 2 consider, yeah, I mean, this hand's kind of sick. 2 considers gives us so many looks at lands. We'll keep. Looks like we're playing against Burn. This is almost unlosable, assuming that we actually find our second land. Put Drown in my graveyard, please. Another Archon, unfortunate. There's the land. We'll shock. Unmarked Grave. I would have loved a Mending instead of one of these other cards, but that's fine. We should be okay. We're getting an Archon back next turn, and there's not much our opponent can do about it, other than perhaps Skullcrack or Life Gain trigger. He suspends a Rift Bolt. Persist Archon. Hopefully we draw land. I will block even if he targets Archon, because we have another Persist. Target that, that's fine. We'll block. Spends another Rift Bolt. No creature. But this game is over. I'll target my guy again, spend 2 burn spells killing it. Helix to finish it off. We have 2 cantrips to find additional lands. We can get Unburial Rites with Unmarked Grave. Okay, there's another land. We'll fetch immediately. Basic Island. Serum Visions first, always. There's a Persist. And knowing that we have that on top of our library, I'll simply pass with Drown in the Lockup. If I cast Consider, I can't cast Persist also, so there's no point. I'll counter any spell. First to hand. Okay, given that, I'll just go ahead and draw that Persist. Get 1 card deeper into the deck. We'll find another land, that would be nice. I'd love a Polluted Delta or Basic Swamp, so that we could both persist and hold up Drown. Okay, that's good enough. I should have persisted first in case I drew another land, and that was less taxing on our life. But it's it doesn't make a huge difference. Now we'll drown the Lurrus, and I expect a concession shortly from the opponent. Okay, opponent scoops it up. That was enough for him. Alright, against Burn, we want Fatal Push for their small creatures, and Flusterstorm for their spells. Chalice is cute, but we play a lot of 1-mana things, so it's not the best. Plus they dodge quite a lot. They have many 2-drops and 3-drops. in their deck, so Chalice doesn't do as much as you would hope for it to do. Engineered explosives can be fine, but we'll leave that alone. As far as stuff to take out, I'll take out 4 Thoughtseize. We don't want to be paying life too much, and I'll take out 1 Teferi. It's one of these slower spells in the deck. One nice thing is that Teferi prevents our burn opponent from casting Suspended Rift Bolts because it happens in their upkeep and they can't cast sorceries in their upkeep, so. This is too slow, so we'll mulligan. Unmarked Grave, Persist, and lands, so we'll go and keep that. I will ship back, let's see here. It's either Basic Swamp or Godless Shrine. I think I would rather have access to more colors, so we'll put back the Basic Swamp. I'll play a Darkslick Shores and hold up a Fatal Push on turn 1. I don't need to find anything, so I'm not casting this Serum Visions. Goblin Guide. Reveals Flusterstorm off the top, that's pretty good. Now we get to hold up either Flusterstorm or Fatal Push. Little Darkslick Shores and pass. Monastery Swiftspear, okay. We'll wait for the Goblin Guide trigger. Archon of Cruelty on top. Okay, we'll kill the Swiftspear. Shock, Unmarked Grave. Grab an Archon. This somewhat opens us up to Grave Hate from our opponent. But we're on the draw, so we can't really spend too much time fooling around. Okay, we have Flusterstorm up in case our opponent has Surgical Extraction. But if he were smart, he would do it right now. I'm somewhat doubting that our opponent has Surgical, so play out our Darkslick Shores and Persist. If our opponent Skull Cracks, I will not counterspell it. I'd rather hold it up for a Path or a Strime, that's fine. Okay, our opponent's empty-handed. So let's see here. They draw a 2-mana spell. We can Flusterstorm it, but if they draw a 1-mana spell, we can't. So we'll go ahead and Serum Visions instead of holding up Flusterstorm. We're not dead to any particular card. Bottom both of these. About all I'm interested in is Faithful Mending to help gain a little bit more life. He draws a Sunbaked Canyon. Redraw. Oh man, punished. Punished big time. That's fine. Well, that was an argument for holding up Flusterstorm, I suppose. But we have Faithful Mending now. We'll go and cast that a couple of times. There's a Persist. And we can hold up Flusterstorm. Okay, our opponent scoops it up. 3-2 in a league with Esper Reanimator. I think that we played reasonably well. We made a few mistakes here and there, but our round 1 opponent, Jund Saga, is an extremely hard deck for this one to beat. Every other deck you have a decent shot against. We got a little unlucky. Maybe we kept a sketchy hand or two versus our round 2 Hammertime opponent, but other than that, went pretty smoothly. I hope you enjoyed.